Hello, everybody. This is Greg29407 back with another episode of City of Heroes. We are here with a brand new character, all dressed in white. This is Bridezilla, and she is a Dominator. She's a water control Psychokinetic Dominator, which are two new sets that are available on the Thunderspy server, which is where I'm playing on. You can see she is such a happy-looking young bride, and it's the name Bridezilla. This is a Dominator. This is one of my first Dominators I've played. I played some over the years, one or two. I've not had much success with them. This character is very, very different. This character is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. We're in for a treat today. This is a great character to play. I'm at level 39 right now, and I am just going to town with this character. Two new power sets. I didn't know much about them at all. So what I want to do to start off with today, though, is to go over Dominators themselves. How they're developed, what they do, why they do that, and that kind of thing, and also why I've had a kind of a hard time getting into them over the years. So, sorry about that. So Dominators came out with City of Villains in 2006, and at the time they were considered to be controllers with damage, because all villain archetypes were considered combinations of two hero power sets back in those days, and they do have almost all of the controller control power sets. In fact, on Thunderspy, they have all the control power sets, including Illusion. They just added that. So they have the control of controllers, but they also have damage, which is, when you're playing a lot of control, you're like, oh my goodness, this is going to be perfect for me. This would be fantastic. Little tougher than originally thought, originally planned. As you know, I love my controllers. I love going in and playing as a very stable cadence, especially now that controllers have containment. So when someone is under your control, then you can do double damage on them. And as a very simple boom, 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 stay at range, do your controls and attacks, and it's very simple, very, very nice. I find it relaxing. I love my controllers. The only problem with the controllers I have is I'm running out of controller sets that I haven't used before. I'm using them all. Dominators, on the other hand, they have the control, but they also have this assault set as their secondary. So in that case, it becomes a little more schizophrenic. How do you actually play this character? Do you play more for the control, or do you play for the assault, or do you do the combination? You want to do the combination. So it's a little tougher to handle, a little harder to get used to. Plus, a lot of the thing is, with the assault attacks, your power sets, you have a combination of range attacks and melee attacks. And the melee attacks are generally pretty good. Now, I play my controllers from range. And you can play Dominators from range as well. In fact, I have a Dominator on the other server that I was preparing to do videos on when they said we couldn't do videos on their server anymore. That one is an Earth Fire Dominator, and he's actually a pretty good character. I play him completely from range. I use my Earth controls, and then when I have him under control, being held or whatever, then I'm going to use my fire attacks on him, and it plays very safely and very stable. I play him kind of like a controller, with a little bit of extra attacks in there. This character, on the other hand, plays completely different. This is a complete chaos character, and it is so much fun. Water control has a few more melee controls than you would see on others, and Psychokinetic is almost all melee / close range, because Psychokinetic is using a combination of whips and swords. So, and it is amazing. It's incredible. It's so much fun. But it's a completely, totally different play style than you would on any other Dominator at all. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this character. I've gotten killed a lot on this character, but only because when you're in the midst of battle, you feel like you're playing a brute, and you're not playing a brute, and then you jump into something, and you get one shot by somebody. Oh, yeah. It's hard to get frustrated with the character when you die on this character, because I didn't die because something's lacking in the character. I died because I act like an idiot, and I went in and started attacking someone without putting controls on them first. I need to use my controls. and I just want to go in there and just wail the tar out of enemies. So it's a really fun character. But let's talk about Dominators first. Again, they have the control of controllers, but control set of controllers, but they don't. Then the controls are not as strong as controllers, and then their damage is not as strong a damage as you would see on a blaster or a scrapper or something. So you think, well, they're a poor man's controller and a poor man's blaster. What good is that? Well, they're a combination of a controller and a blaster. That's really good. So it's a really good combination. It's just a combination of power sets that you need to learn to play. It's not like controllers control, tankers tank, scrappers scrap, brutes brute. Those are pretty simple to play. When you get into something like this, Dominator, then you have a combination of things you do. You're going to do some controls, and you're also going to do some actual outright attacks. And you're also going to slot your powers differently. On my controller, if I was going to play water control as a controller, I'm going to have these powers slotted up for, in case of suffocate, hold, and damage. Not on a Dominator, because I've got all these attack powers that do much more damage than I would get off of suffocate. So suffocate would be just holds, accuracy and holds. So you're going to slot your powers differently, you're going to treat your powers differently, and you're going to have different type of play style. So it's going to be really interesting. One of the things with Dominators as well is, every archetype has its own inherent power. With controllers, you have containment. So when you have someone under your control, then you do double damage on them. That's great. If you're a corruptor, you have Scourge. So when you've got someone, then suddenly you're doing extra damage. And if you're a tanker, then you have Gauntlet, which, as it turns out, has not been doing anything for years. It wasn't working. So it's supposed to help you out. It wasn't actually turned on. And with scrappers, you get the chance of doing critical damage. So they all have their inherents. Dominators have something called domination. And what happens is, as you're using your control powers and everything, you have a domination bar right here. It looks like your fury bar in a brute. And as you go up, it slowly goes up. It doesn't move up and down really fast like Fury, though. With Fury, it goes way up, then way down. Way up and down. Domination moves up very slowly. It also moves down even slower. So you can, have this bar go up, and then you're finished your mission. You go off. You talk to your contact. You get a new mission going, and by then your domination bar may drop down to here. So it goes slowly up and slowly down. When it gets around 90%, right up around in here, your character's going to get a little sparkly. And this button right here, Domination, is going to light up. If you click on Domination, what happens is, for 90 seconds, you're going to be incredibly powerful. What happens is your endurance bar is going to go up to maximum, which is great. All of your controls are going to be better. So in other words, if you have a Mag 3 hold, then while Domination's on, you have Mag 6, which means you can hold anybody in the game. Well, maybe not an arch villain, unless you use it with something else, but super strong. Also, your control powers will last twice as long. So if you have a hold that lasts 16 seconds, it's now going to last 32 seconds, which is amazing. So all your control powers, if you have a confused control power, they're going to be twice as likely to be confused, and it's going to last twice as long. So this is fantastic. It does not affect damage. It used to, but they pulled that out. So it does not affect damage, and doesn't help your health. I think it does help your recharge. Maybe, I'm not sure about that. But it's gonna. But your controls are gonna be so incredibly powerful. And then, after 90 seconds, what happens is that this bar, which is all maxed out, goes back down to 0, and then you start over, building it back up. Boom, 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 boom. Now, your domination has a 4-minute cooldown. So it's up for a minute and a half, and then, it's going to be another 2. After it goes down, you got another 2.5 minutes before it comes back up. So it's good for every 90 seconds. So what happens is, when you're playing Dominator, you get into that mindset of, it's lit up. I don't want to waste it yet. I'm going to wait till the end of the mission before I use domination. I don't want to use it right now because I'll need it for the boss of the mission. And then what happens is, and this happens with me too, you get to the end of the mission and go, I forgot to hit domination. Oops. The advice I've read online it from people who play a lot of Dominators is when the thing lights up, just go ahead and click it. Just go ahead and use it because it doesn't take that long. I mean, 4 minutes for it to cool down. You know, a typical radio mission lasts about 15 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes. So it's gonna come back up a couple of times. You can get this a couple of times off in a typical mission. So, unless you're going to be going up against a super hard enemy at the very end, just when it comes up and you're in the mid and you're fighting some bad guys, use it. Use it. Don't just kind of put it off. I tend to put it off too much, but that's just me. Now, what happened is back when they started doing enhancement sets, where you can get all the boosts and everything, somebody figured out that by using the right combination of enhancement sets to get all the bonuses, if you got enough recharge bonus on this thing, you could actually get permanent domination. Now you need like 180% global recharge on your character to get permanent domination. So in other words, you need to have, because you can't affect the domination button itself. There's no slotting. You can't slot anything in this. So, but if you get global things, so for instance, if you go in here, I have actually taken so far Luck of the Gambler and put it into Grant Invisibility. So this is going to boost my my recharge on my entire character by 7.5%. And I also put it into combat jumping, so that's another 7.5%. So I've increased my global recharge on this character so far by 15%. So if I get another 165%, I could have permanent domination. But that's not impossible. Some people figure out how to do it, and it's very hard to do. I'm saying it's hard to do for us regular players. If for a min-maxer who has 50 different characters and they have plenty of influence, it's probably fairly easy. But you have to build your character a certain way. You have to figure out which enhancement sets you're going to put into certain powers. So that means that some powers you're going to overslot than you normally would, and some powers you're going to underslot than you normally would, just to get those recharge bonuses. I'm going to do that on this particular character. I've never done that before. I am going to do that in this character to see what it's like, because I just want to see what it's like. But the problem with the permanent domination is that everyone got to the point, or I don't say everyone, a lot of the high-level players, got to the certain point of, if you're playing a Dominator, you should obviously have perma-dom. If not, then what are you doing? Because everything they do is min-max, and the rest of us players don't have that. So every time I think about playing a Dominator, and you go on the forums to do some reading up on the character or something, everyone says, well, of course you have to have permanent domination. Perma-dom is the only way to go. Well, I don't know how to do that. I don't want to spend all that time and effort and influence trying to get this. So my thinking was this: I don't want to play a crippled character because the only way to do the character is to do all this special extra stuff to get it to where it can play. And that's why I didn't play Dominators for a long time. And that's completely the wrong way of looking at this, because Dominators are not crippled characters. Dominators are really good. They're really strong. They have the controls of controllers. If it's not 100% of a controller, it's like 90% of a controller. Plus, they have all these this damage, like a blaster. Not as much damage, but still really good damage. So you got this great combination. Dominators by themselves are really, really strong characters if you play them, get into the right play style. So even if you never click on domination at all, if you never use it, if you never use this button, you still have a really good character that can do pretty much everything in the game, just like any other character. Now, without using domination at all, you ought to use it when the button comes up, use it, But just by itself, it's a very, very effective archetype, very effective. Now, if you get this, when you're doing domination, even if you don't have perma-dom, just regular domination, the character becomes incredibly effective. And if you get perma-domination, apparently it's going to be just even better. I don't know. I'm guessing that when I get permanent domination on this character, I'm going to keep forgetting to hit this button. Oh, you have to use hasten too to help out. That gives you 70% of your way too on there. I'm going to always forget to hit the button and go, oh no, I forgot. Oh well, but that's just me. I'm not going to remember to do this. That's just the way it is. But I want to see if I can do it. And if I get to permanent domination, I'll do an episode on that so you can see what it's like and how I did it. But so there's always a wrong way of thinking about dominators that, oh, I don't have, because even if you play a dominator, somebody goes, oh, you have perma-dom? Are you a perma-dom? And this is from people who have never played a dominator. And if they have played a dominator, have never had a permanent dominator, but they just know that's the question you're supposed to ask. Oh, if you have a dominator, then, oh, do you have perma-dom? Well, most people say no, because they don't. But don't let that make you think that, oh, if I don't have that, I can't play this character, because that's not true. So I think that's one of the bad raps against dominators, and that's one of the reasons why dominators are one of the least played archetypes. I think they're slightly more than stalkers, but they're not played very often, because I think a lot of people, first of all, they don't really know how to play them because it's kind of weird. It's a combination of controllers and blasters, and they keep hearing, well, if you don't have this super advanced way of playing, then you're no good, which is not true. And so I think that kind of hurts the archetype itself. So that's kind of a problem. But don't fall into that mind trap. It's very easy to fall into that. Don't do it. Give these things a try. Now, what I'm going to do today is go over the power sets that we have for water control, psychokinetic. Again, these are 2 brand new power sets just on Thunderspy. They created these. And they play completely differently than anything else I've ever played in this game. And it is complete and total chaos. It's amazing. So let's go through these. So first of all, we have water control. And like they do on all the pet sets, controllers and dominators and Thunderspy, which is something I kind of disagree with. The first power they give you is what's normally the level 32 power, your pet. Again, I disagree with it, but I also take advantage of it. So you get a water golem. And water golem is like a big, like a water character right here. Water golem is, again, this is a brand new power set. Let me also say up front, Thunderspy doesn't do a lot of documentation on their power sets because they do a lot of experimentation, a lot of new things, a lot of exciting things, but they don't do documentation much on it. So I was able to find absolutely nothing written up about either one of these 2 power sets. So the only way to learn about these things was to actually take the powers and figure out what they do. So this is going to be a big help for you, hopefully, because I've gone through almost all these powers and I know what they do now. But I had no idea what any of these did until I would read this little thing and then take it and see if it was any good or not. So Water Golem, he is a pet, and he is incredibly effective. Maybe a little too effective. This guy... Now, he does take a lot of damage, so he dies off like other pets. But when he's alive, he does a lot of damage. Like, I mean, sometimes my enemies will die before I get a chance to attack them. He's already killed them all. So he may end up getting dialed back a little bit in terms of his damage because he's really strong. Yeah, he can kill the entire group of enemies without me doing anything, which is a little unusual, but okay. He's really good. Next we have is Suffocate. And Suffocate is going to be your single target hold. Single target hold is really, really good. He does some damage over time, cold damage. But since this is a Dominator, not a controller, you're not going to want to slot your control powers with damage, with one exception, which we'll get to next. Normally for a controller, you would slot this for maybe a little bit of hold, but mainly for damage. But we have an entire damage set right over here, which has everything is damage. So these control powers, we're only going to slot for control because that's all we need them for. Because the damage that these powers do is nothing compared to these. So just slot for, in this case, hold. So I've got this one slotted for, I think, an accuracy, an endurance, and 2 holds. And it holds really well. It comes up really fast, and so you can use it for every battle. I generally put this on my highest level enemy, and while he's choking to death under hold, then I can attack the other enemies around him. Actually, let me bring up my water golem so you can take a look at him. There he is. You got a little bit of water on him. Okay, so next we have. All right, that's loud enough. Okay. Next we have something called Turbulent Aura. let me turn this thing on. Okay. So it's a nice big round thing. It's about 20 feet in radius, maybe 20 feet in diameter, I'm not sure. And this is a really good power. This does minor damage, cold. It also does knockdown. And it also has a slight heal. So what happens is, let's take a look at it in detail. The average, I have one slot of damage in there, so it's a little bit higher. Normally, this the base is like 16 point something. So it's going to do cold damage on a target. About once every second it's going to tick. It also has a slight heal. Now, here's what I found. I had this slotted for a heal originally, so I wanted to boost my heal up. Now, what happens is when an enemy is inside this circle, it will tick on whether it's going to give you a heal or not. And it's a few times, not very often. So you get a little bit of a heal. I had this slot for heal. I said, well, that's not very good. The good thing about the damage is it slots about every second or every 2 seconds for damage. So you're doing a lot more damage with this. And it also does knockdown. So what happens is when you get this thing on, these enemies are flopping around on the ground. They're getting damage done to them. And occasionally when you hit them, you get a little bit of heal too. The heal isn't big enough to slot for, is what I found. I had it slotted, and it just wasn't doing that much because, let's face it, with this, you've got enemies really close. You're in melee range. So they can hit you really hard. And that 13 or 16 plus heal isn't going to help you when they hit you for 150. It's kind of a waste of time. It's better to do some damage in here and keep hitting them with your attacks and kill them off as quickly as possible. So I'm doing some slight slotting for damage on this case, and eventually it'll be. I may have a slot for heals too. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Next we have Deluge, and Deluge is right here. Deluge is an attack power, so we actually are going to have some damage on this. It also does knockdown. And let me show you what that looks like. Yeah, so this is where we are going to go ahead and slot. Actually, so we don't slot these for damage, and then you see, oh yeah, we got all this stuff slot for damage. So this is actually an attack power, Deluge. And it's going to do knockdown. It hits them with a big thing of cold water, cold and smashing damage. And it's really strong. So I use that along with my whips. It's right up here along my ranged attacks. I got my whips and I've got my Deluge in here. It's a great starting attack because it knocks them down right away. My whips have a good chance of knocking enemies down, but Deluge knocks them down every time, or practically every time. And what you'll find is one of the good things about water control is knockdown. And the good thing about Psychokinetics is a lot of knockdown. So your main control is going to be knockdown. And when they're knocked down, then they can't be hitting you, which is great. So that's a really good power. Next we have Geyser Burst. And Geyser Burst puts a little geyser up, and it knocks people down and does a little bit of damage. Let me show you what that looks like here. You just kind of, it's a targeted area, so you're going to put it like right here. So any enemies going here are going to be getting like knocked out. Oh, they're going to be knocked down, and it's going to do a little bit of damage. I've got some damage in here slotted for, but it's like very minor because it does a little bit of damage, but not a whole lot. I'm going to end up having like a recharge and then a couple of damages, and that's pretty much it in there. Now the problem is, notice it's a little narrow. So if you're in this range right here, then it's going to knock him down and do some damage. But a lot of times what happens is the enemies like stand over here. Oh no, what's going on? And they stand over here, and then they just kind of laugh at you. And it look like you're running the Bellagio in Las Vegas. It lasts a decent length of time, though, as you can see. I'm going to get back to Geyser Burst in just a few minutes, though. Next, we have Tidal Wave. Tidal Wave is a really good power. It does knock down, AoE knockdown. And it does some light damage, cold and smashing. It also does a stun. So a lot of times it's a great starting power to use on when you have some enemies. You're going to see them from a distance away, and you're going to click on this, and there's a bit of a long wind up on this. power. So she's going to take both hands and reach back and then push forward, and it's going to cause this tidal wave to knock everyone back, and knocks them back. And when they get up, they're stunned for a decent amount of time. And the cone itself is pretty wide, so you can hit a wide range of enemies with this thing. And since they're stunned, then you can just go after them and start attacking one at a time. So it's a really strong power to use. It does do the knockback, which is kind of a pain in the neck, but the stun afterwards is really useful. Now, here's one thing to watch out for. The animation time for doing the tidal wave, when she pulls her arms back and slowly pushes forward with the tidal wave, it takes a bit of time. It's like a 3 or 4 second animation because it's kind of dramatic. The problem is your enemies are alerted to you as soon as you start the animation, not at the end of the animation, which is where it should be, but at the start of the animation. So I generally take stealth on this character, and so I may be stealth and I may be standing a decent amount of feet away where they can't see me, but when I start this animation, they immediately turn and look at me. They can see me because I've started animation. I haven't done anything to them yet. So a lot of times, at least one of the enemies is going to get a shot off at you. They're going to take the first shot because they see you. Now, I think that may be a mistake. Wormhole for gravity used to be the same way, and they changed that so that enemies were not alerted to you until the animation was completed. That's how that probably should be here, but it's not. So that's something to look out for. Next power is Tidal Wave, and Tidal Wave, Riptide. We just did Tidal Wave. Next power is Riptide. Riptide is a targeted AoE, and like Geyser, you can use this from around a corner so they can't see you. And what you do is sit here and place this. And the cool thing about this power is any enemies are going to get dragged to the center. They get pulled. So all your enemies are staying in the circle, suddenly get pulled. And it's what is this? Mag 3? Let's see here. Let me see here. Doesn't say. Is really strident. It didn't last very long. But it pulls all of your enemies into the center. So it groups everyone together. Now, if you're playing with a tanker, they're going to love that. They're going to love Riptide because, this is doing all the work for me. It's pulling everyone together. Now, here's what I found. And this is a great combination. So what you do, let me see if the power comes back up here in a minute. And this is a great way to start your attacks. Hide around a corner where no one can see you because, again, you don't want them to be alerted. You're a Dominator. You have no defense or resistance at all. And so you're going to be around the corner. And as my power slowly comes back up. So what you're going to do is you're going to place this. And then you're going to take your Geyser and you're going to stick it right in the middle. And what happens is all your enemies get dragged into the middle, and then they're flopping. And they're flopping, and they're flopping. Riptide does light damage. Geyser does light damage. And they're going to be flopping around, knock down, and it does great. And everybody in that big circle is going to be hit with a lot of damage, and then you just start attacking them. It's a great combination. So Geyser Burst by itself is like, Riptide by itself is okay. Together, they're really, really effective. It's actually a lot of fun to use. And that's a great starting attack. Tidal Wave, you start by itself for one attack group. The next group of enemies, you use Geyser Burst, Riptide together as a starting attack. The next one you use will be our last power here, Drowning Pool, which is our AoE hold, and which comes back up very quickly. Let me see what the time is on that. Recharge time, 2 minutes. Generally, they used to be 4 minutes. I think that may be just a case of Thunderspy. They've cut the, all the AoE hold powers had like a 4-minute timer, which was way too long. Like a lot of people don't use AoE holds on controllers or Dominators. They cut it in half, so 2 minutes here. I'm not sure if it's 2 minutes on other servers as well. It may not be. So something to look out for. 2 minutes is great. It's great. So Drowning Pool is, again, your AoE attack. I skipped Hypothermia. I did not take this power. is targeted AoE, and it puts your enemies to sleep. So this is probably okay to use solo, like we did on my Sonic Blaster. The sleep was fantastic. You use it every time. This is again, also, this is, instead of being a cone, it's a target AoE, which is great. I didn't take it because it's like, well, I got all these other attack powers, so I'm not going to use it. But again, it's probably a perfectly fine thing to take. I just didn't do it. Okay, next we're going to look at Psychokinetic Assault. Psychokinetic Assault is, when you see those demon masterminds and they have their personal attack powers like a whip, and I know a lot of people when the game was live would say, oh, why can't we have a whip attack power for blasters or scrappers or something? It's, well, what are you going to do, have 9 whips attacking? That seems kind of boring. You don't do that. So what these guys did, they came up with a combination of whips and Psyblade swords. There are some Circle of Thorn enemies, some high-level Circle of Thorn enemies that have these floating swords that would pop up and attack you. And there's like one enemy that does that. And someone saw that and said, oh, let's use that. So this is a combination of those kind of floating swords and your whip. And it's pretty amazing. I'm going to turn this off. And so what happens is you have these whip attacks. And again, it's like a psi whip. It just kind of comes out of your character's mind, and it's a. Let me see what the range is on this. I think the range is like 40. $80. Wow. It's bigger than I thought. Okay, that's full range. I didn't realize that. Okay, I've been getting way too close on this. So we start off with Psi Whip Crack. Does moderate damage, psionic and energy damage. So between cold and smashing damage over here and psionic and energy over here, you got 4 of the 8 damages that your character's doing, which is pretty good. Does moderate damage. The other starting one is Psi Whip Lash. Does minor damage, so I skipped that one. It's good. This is a bit of a tight build because I'm taking so many powers and so many other things as well. I need to drop something out, so I just went ahead and dropped that one out. This one, of course, has a faster recharge, but I've got plenty of powers for that, so I don't really need that one. It's a great power. It cracks the whip, and the whip knocks enemies down, has a chance to knock them down anyway. All your whip ones do, so that's always kind of cool. You got your water powers knocking people down, and you got your psychokinetic powers knocking them down too, which is pretty cool. Psi Blade Slash. It does high damage. It's right here, and it does this purple Psi Blade shows up in your hand, and you slash it, and does basic sword damage. Then we have Psi Whip Thrash. This is a short range cone, and it does moderate damage, and also does knockdown. Now, since this is a cone, a lot of people are not going to take it. I like cones. A lot of people don't like cones. I'm not sure, again, because it's not documented anywhere, what the size of the cone is. But I think it's really big, because what I've noticed is, from the animation and from the damage I'm seeing, it's a pretty wide cone. And it does decent amount of damage, and it can knock them down and stuff. So I do take this one. It's really useful. And the other thing that happens with all of these whip attacks, I'm jumping back and forth here because I forgot about this. Whenever you use any of your whip attacks, there's a chance that a sword is going to suddenly pop up and start attacking your enemies too, and not just next to you, but it's going to follow your in. If you're attacking 3 enemies, then all of a sudden 1 or 2 swords just suddenly when you show up, they just show up when you're using your whip, and the swords start going after one of your enemies. And if your enemy runs away, sometimes the sword will follow them, and the sword doesn't last very long before it disappears. But I mean, they show up, and I don't know if it show up based on the number of enemies you have or the number of attacks. I'm not sure what's going on with it. But like yesterday, I was in these caves fighting the Riptide, and I ran around the corner, and there were like 7 Riptides standing right there. So, oh no. And they started attacking me, and I got off a couple of whip attacks, and I was getting knocked down because I don't have. I'm going to get my epic power pool. I'm going to get something to protect me from getting knocked down. But I was getting knocked down, and my damage was like dropping. All of a sudden, all these purple swords showed up. I think it's like 7 or 8 of them, and they make a noise when they show up. And there are so many swords showing up that it kind of overwhelmed my speaker. So it's like a, and these swords just started like attacking all these enemies, and it killed them all. It killed them all. I got 2 whip cracks off, and that was it. And they were all dead because these swords came. The swords are kind of like in the Sorcerer's Apprentice with Mickey Mouse when he makes the mops show up to mop the floor for him, and then more and more mops start coming. They start dancing and all that stuff. That's what these swords are like. They just show up out of nowhere and they start dancing around, killing your enemies for you. It's pretty amazing. I don't know exactly what triggers it, but I think it seems like the swords don't show up if I use my sword, but if I use my whip, the swords do show up. So that's all I've figured out so far on that. But it's really, really helpful. The next power is Manifest. Manifest is basically your build-up. As you can see, it does plus damage and plus to hit. But here's the thing, though. What it does, it also summons a lot of these swords. And I'm not sure how many, but all of a sudden you have all these extra swords just from clicking this button, and they all start attacking. So what I want to do is I want to get around a big group of enemies and then click this Manifest. Will I get all the swords for all the enemies plus extra swords? I don't know. But those swords are really good. They don't last for very long, but they're really good. Another reason to play close in as opposed to far back ranged, because if the swords don't last very long, you want to be close to the enemy so the swords will be right there and they can start doing their damage right away. So this combination cries out for melee as opposed to range. Next, we have Sideblade Spin. And this is basically your sword that does this, attacks everyone around you. And then Sideblade Slam, which does high damage, and that's this one right here. This one does a really cool thing. You grab your sword, and then you jump up in the air and you slam it down with blade facing downward onto somebody, and it does some really serious damage to the enemy. It's really, really good. So it's a single target damage, but it's really strong. So that's a nice finisher. I like using my whip attacks and then finish up with this one, and it's like put the icing on the cake. It does really well. Psychokinetic Pulse is another like Turbulent Aura. Right here. And what this does, it does damage. I think it does damage. Wait a minute, let me. Yeah, it does do damage. It does about half the damage of the Turbulent Aura does. Well, more than half, but it's doing less damage than Turbulent Aura, and it does a higher endurance cost. I've got 2 endurance slots in here to pull the endurance cost down. There is no bonus to accuracy, and it's only a 10-foot radius as opposed to a 20-foot radius. So it's half the radius of Turbulent Aura. What I generally do is I have them both going at the same time. But this eats up my endurance, and you will have a bit of an endurance issue with this particular combination of power sets. But what I like about this is if I run in close in, I'm getting damage from the Psychokinetic Pulse. I'm getting 50% more damage than that on the Turbulent Aura. Both have a chance to knock down, or in this case, knock up. So they're the same thing. They're doing different types of damage, psionic energy versus cold smashing. Also has a chance for slow. So even without me doing anything, I've got 2 damage auras. It's like having blazing aura on my fire armor brute and another blazing aura. It's like, wow, this is really cool. So having 2 of those does a lot of decent damage. And I'm also doing all my attacks on my enemies, and my water golem was also staying there doing attacks, and I got these crazy swords that are showing up out of nowhere doing attacks. So it is incredibly insane how much damage is being done on this character. The final power in the set is Psy-Whip Coil, and I just got this a level or so ago. This is your 3rd hold attack in this combination. We had Suffocate, which is single target, and we had Drowning Pool, which is AoE. Psy-Whip Coil is a damage and a single target hold. What happens is you hit an enemy with a whip. The whip holds on to them. And so it puts them on hold. It lifts them up in the air while it's doing some really good damage. Damage over time. Boom, 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 boom. You see all these damage powers come off. And then it slams them to the ground. So it's really, really good. You can slot this purely for damage. In my case, because I'm going to try and get perma-dom, I'm going to do 4 slot for one of the hold enhancement sets, and then the last 2 slots will be pure damage. So it'll be a combination of hold and damage. One problem with this attack power, it has a long animation time. When you hit someone with it, and you're lifting them up with your whip, and they're up in the air and they're getting all this damage, you cannot break the animation and do something to attack someone else. So if you're attacking one enemy and he has his friends, they're attacking you, you can't do anything about that. So you can get killed pretty easily by using this. So you probably don't want to start a fight with a group of enemies using this attack. You want to maybe lock everyone else down with a hold first and then attack your main boss enemy with this power. But don't just start an attack on one guy while the other 3 guys are standing right there, because that won't do you any good. So very strong attacks. So that is the power set. We have a lot of different ways of doing things. This is like my Earth Storm controller. You have so many different combinations of things to do. It's great. Oh, one other thing. Water control, most of these powers have a chance of giving the drowning effect. I don't know what that is. I found nothing written on drowning. It's just that what happens is over some enemies' heads you see the word drowning, and they start to grab their throats. I think that is a short-term hold. I think. It looks like if I'm attacking enemies, suddenly it'll say drowning over someone's head, and they suddenly grab their throats, and they're not attacking me anymore because they're choking to death, or drowning, I guess. So it seems to be a lot of these powers have a chance of putting a little short-term hold on someone, which is great. So it's a little bonus there. I've thoroughly enjoyed playing this character so far. Again, I'm going to take her all the way up to perma-domination if I can. It's going to take a long time. I know that. I'll be level 50 plus into incarnates before I have enough influence and enough ways of getting it. I have to get a lot of sets. And as I mentioned before, it's hard to earn money on the Thunderspy server because you can't buy and sell as much. There's not much of a market here. One thing that Thunderspy does allow you to do, though, is to trade in your reward merits for recipes. So for like 13 reward merits, I can get a lot, a recipe that I really need that would normally cost me a lot of money on the market. I can get it for like 13 reward merits. That's great. But that just means I need to do a lot more task forces and things like that to boost up my number of reward merits. My characters on the Homecoming server, I got like 400, 500, 600 reward merits. I don't do anything with them because they're just there. Here, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be desperate for reward merits. So that does encourage team play, which is nice. So again, this is a combination of power sets that's really going to encourage your Dominator to fight close range, or melee distance. So it may not be the power set for you. I thought it would not be the power set for me, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, so it's really fun. So I have talked way too long. What we're going to do is next episode, I'm going to take this character out. We'll do some solo missions, maybe some radio missions, or maybe some missions in Riptide Warzone. I'll show you how all these powers work and different techniques and different strategies for using this. It's a lot of different combinations, a lot of things you can do. And this is a combination of power sets you will not get bored on, because it's like, oh, this time I'm going to attack using this combination of powers, and then I'm going to use this combination of powers. And you may also see why when you play this character for a while, you start to think you're a brute because you're doing such amazing damage, and then you will run in to attack an enemy, and they will one-shot you because you don't want to run in because you have 0 defense and 0 resistance. So do not do that. You start off with your controls first. But it's a lot of fun. So next episode, we'll pick back up with this character, and we'll do a lot of really cool stuff. And until next time, this is Greg 29407 along with Bridezilla saying au revoir, and we will see you next time.